Welcome. So in this exercise, what we're going to do is actually show you how trends can be useful in some cases when we're talking about macroeconomic analysis and how trends sometimes can throw us astray. So very specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to first off look at gross domestic product. That's a measure of the gross output that a country produces in a certain time period. And what we're going to do is look at forecasting the GDP measure for various portions of time. And in this very simple forecast model, what we're going to observe and what's going to come out of all this is that the trend or there's a trend of GDP. In fact, we could just go take a look at this real quick with the series on the Fred. So remember, the Fred's our favorite place for macro data. We just want to get some macro data. There we go. And let's go. We should be very careful, though. We want to type in real GDP. We're calling from first principles, okay? Real GDP is GDP that has been adjusted for price changes, okay? So we want to have a real GDP estimate. And you see that this clearly has a trend over time. And in fact, looking at this graph, and this is something that we're gonna get to very straightforward. You can see that that actually the trend, if I were going to make a trend line, would actually give me a fairly good prediction of GDP. And in fact, this has been something that's been proven by a growth economist called Chad Jones, and he's used data going all the way back from I forget it's the 1940s or 50s, and he could actually forecast out GDP all the way up into into the new millennium with some fairly impressive degrees of accuracy because GDP itself follows a fairly stable trend. Okay, so this is something that we need to observe in macro data, is this trend. What is this trend? Does anybody know? This trend is actually economic growth. That is what you're looking at when we look at the trend of GDP over long periods of time. That is economic growth. And we're not diving into this section or into this part of the class, but I would just be amiss if I did not mention it and did not also say that what drives economic growth. You should know, actually, squarely, and one thing only, besides so modern. I should qualify modern economic growth. Modern economic growth is driven by technology. Okay, that's it. And especially if we look at growth. So I was thinking of other things like more people, you have population growth, other types of capital accumulation growths. Those things cannot explain modern economic growth, and they can't explain income differences across countries and all sorts of things. Technology is it. Okay, so technology is the factor that pushes us forward. And so it's kind of interesting. The trend is a study of technology, but in general, what I'm going to show you is that, look, macroeconomics has two fundamental sort of aspects. When we look at the gross domestic product, we see that there is a trend. That's this idea of growth. And then there's also these cyclical types of behaviors. We have these business cycles. We have these recessions, these bars. Right? You see these as these shaded bars in our Fred data. These are recessionary periods followed by periods of booms. Okay, the booms and busts and booms and busts and booms and busts and things. That is the domain of your textbook. So I just want to put your textbook into a proper context. It fits in the section or in the realm of cyclical types of economic behavior. So you've got cyclical behaviors and you have trend behaviors. And all of your reading and everything we've been looking at is on the cyclical side, okay? So we're just gonna do a little tiny brief exercise on the trend side, and that's it. That's the purpose. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna download or I'll make available to you this real gross domestic product. And what I'm gonna have you do is we're gonna create some different forecasts in Tableau. So you're gonna go to Tableau, open up your text file, and there it is. I'm not going to walk you through this one fairly step by step in this video, so it should help you. Go to your worksheet, okay? And what we're going to do is just take the date and and stick it in the columns and take our measure of our GDP. Throw it there. Make sure that the date is going to be quarterly with the year. So we get the date. There we go. Now we've got something that looks like the Fred. It goes from 1940s up into the current period. And we see all the different movements. Wow, look at that spike. That was quite a COVID spike, right? So there we go. That all looks decent. Now what I'm going to do is a forecasting exercise. And what I'd like us to do is, I'd like us to forecast. I don't know if your eyes can quite see. It looks like, to me, it looks like when I look at GDP, I can see almost like there's a kink that happens right somewhere in here. And then like it looks like it changes slope. So I wanted to do a forecast somewhere in the early 90s. So we're going to do one forecast in the early 90s. And I'd like to do another forecast actually right around 2008. And so let's start with this, okay? Let's do our forecast in the 90s first. So let's basically close our eyes and pretend that we're in the 90s and we didn't observe this data. How are we going to do this? Well, easy. Just go to filter it. Let's filter out the range of dates. Okay, and let's just filter out the data. Say, let's go to I don't know. Let's see, 1993. Shall we? Let's say before 1993. We'll say to the first. And go. So we're going to filter our date to 1993. And now it's like, if we were in the data world of 1993 and we went to the Fred, this is what we would have seen, right? Okay, so now we're in 1993 and we want to look forward into the future, say 30 years to the present day. We want to think to ourselves, okay, how accurate can we make a predictive model if we were in 1993 to predict where we're at now? Okay, so let's think about doing that. Actually, with Tableau, we're not going to get too into the intricacies of modeling, but just go click on Analytics and do Forecast. And it'll make a little forecast, but we want a bigger one. So right click on the forecast and we should go down to Forecast here and forecast options. Okay, so forecast length, you'll see there's a data source, fill in missing values, there's a forecast model. You can do different types of forecast modelings, okay, and you can do different kinds of confidence intervals. There's different options here we can work with. I'm going to change the forecast length from 1 to 30 years. And there we go. So there's our forecast now, and let's just go okay. And you see these shaded regions, these are confidence intervals, which are kind of asinine given that so if we look in 2023, the model is giving some confidence that we'll have negative GDP into that. They just don't have, so the confidence intervals here are statistically derived, and you can tell that they lack domain knowledge. We're not going to have negative GDP. You can't produce a negative thing. I don't think. Doesn't make sense to have negative GDP, does it? I mean, come on. We've never had. It's just, that's ridiculous. So a lot of times you'll see these kind of confidence bands, which means that that basically interpreted is that there's some sort of 95% there's a confidence that the data will be between these ranges. Well, obviously we know it's not going to be. Well, it'll be well within that. So those confidence bands are kind of a little bit. I'm trying to show you that they give you confidence bands, but you got to use some interpretation and say, okay, well, those aren't so great anyway. We'll just skip the confidence bands. What we want is actual data. So this is a kind of a weakness that I found in Tableau, is it's hard to just extract this data. If you notice, when I go back to my data side, it didn't create any new measures for this forecasted data. I mean, it shows that to me over here. I see I got a forecast, okay, and I can see the real data, I can see the forecast, but I don't have it immediately available. And that's a weakness. Okay, so I just came up with sort of a hack way to get around this, and there might be a better way. So if you got a better way, please share it. I'd be happy to see it. But this is what you call hacking. Okay, if we're going to hack through this, again, what we need to do is we need to get this data and extract it somehow so that we can put it back into a Tableau worksheet and look at it. But the problem is that this data, although we can see it, it's not available for us to play with in any sort of a way. So we have to extract it first. So look, if you click on it, click anywhere on the graph, and you hit Control plus A. Control A, that selects everything. Okay, so just click on it, hit Control A, and then hit Control C for copy. Okay, Control A, select all, Control C, copy it all. And this is a hack, by the way. Do a new workbook, and then click somewhere in the field. So I just clicked over here, and then do Control V. If you're using a Mac, instead of Control, you're going to be using Command. Okay, I think it will be Command A, but double check. Okay, if you're using a Mac, I hope this doesn't mess you up. You might need to look at it. It's basically the Windows. Look, if I go, let's find this out. Windows Mac equivalent to Control A. Windows Control A. Oh, it is Command A. Okay. Select all items. Command A. Okay, that's what we did. We selected all and we copied. Then you copy and you paste. So now we have this pasted into a new worksheet, and I did that because this is the only way I could figure out how to extract this data. So what you can do to extract any data from a table like this is just, so now we're in this new worksheet where I pasted the information in, and I can see GDP here, okay, actual, and I come down and then there's the estimates down all the way down. Okay, great. So now I need to extract this. What I'm going to do is extract this and pull this into a CSV file. So go ahead and view the data, which is right over on the data sheet, right? So view it right here, and then go click download, okay? And let's go ahead and call this, because we did this from, when did we do this from? Was it from 1993, I believe? Let's go model, and we'll call this underscore, because I never like spaces, 1993. Okay, that's what we'll save it. Model 1993. Okay, and let's go ahead and just, that's fine. And once we save it, we save that data, you can go ahead and delete that sheet that you just created. And let's go ahead and now just change the date on that. So let's go back to our original sheet where we did our forecasting. And let's go ahead and change the date and edit the filter. And now instead of the 1993 range, let's go to, say, 2000. How about we go to January of 2008, okay? And just go, okay. There we go. There's our 2008 model. Okay, it's keeping an estimate. And again, so now we want to extract this information. So click on it. Control A selects it all. Control C copies it. I go a new worksheet. I click in the field and I go Control V and I paste it in. Okay. Now I want to save this data to an Excel worksheet. And again, I'm doing this because I need to get access to this data and I can't really do it natively in Tableau. So I'm going to be using this workaround with using Excel. So go ahead and view the data right up here, and then download the data. And this is going to be, let's call it model, say 2008. Okay, that's fine. Save it. Okay, now we've selected these. In fact, let's go take a look at what we actually just created here I did these in downloads, I believe. So let's go back and forward, refresh it. 1993. You see, the one issue is our dates are now formed in a different way, so it'll be difficult for Tableau to really merge these. So what I want to do, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to take the data from my model, and I want to put it together with my data from my original data set, my my GDP data set. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to do this in a really archaic way, which is just to select it. I'm going to control copy it. Okay, and it's starting from that same period in 1947. Or actually, you know what I could do? Yeah, let's go ahead and control copy it. And I did this once already. Let's go through and GPC. Okay, so I already did this once. This won't be here for you. But go ahead and click on the first date and just control V it. Oh, it's not going to do it for me, huh? Okay, let's see. Model 1990, control C, copied it. Back to, where's my worksheet? Back to my GDP and paste it. And let's do model, and this is 1993? What I forgot what was the cutoff here. Well, I can always verify this real quick. Verify this by 1993, yeah. Model 1993. Okay, we've got one in. I'm just going to close some of these that we're not using so we don't just confuse ourselves too much. Close 1993. And let's go ahead and open up 2008. 2008 gets open. Come on, 2008. Okay, there we go. Here's our 2008 model. Again, just copy it from 1947 Q1 all the way down. And control C, copy it, and pull it in and control V it right there. And this will be model 2008, right? And if you notice the dates, I mean, you can see the dates are just very differently formatted. This would not be an issue, and I'm sure there's like some other more eloquent and more proper ways to actually do this. Natively in Tableau, unfortunately, there just wasn't anything that was too simple that I could find in Tableau. And so I said, back of it, let's just do this in part in Excel, and then we're going to pull this into Tableau. That's the idea. So now you see we have a series for our original data series, a series for our model of 1993, and a series for our model of 2008. And of course, they have the same data early on because this is not forecasted, okay? It's only going to change later on in the years. So in 1993, this should start, and it starts to diverge. You see, yes, in fact, this is different. Not that much different. Our 1998, our 2008 model is not different in 99. Those are it shares the same with the actual GDP. But you see, this model has changed a little bit. And so, kind of surprisingly, when we look down here, look, I mean, we aren't too far off. We're in a pretty good neighborhood still. So I think it's kind of encouraging. Let's go see exactly how close we are. Okay, so go ahead and save this data set, and then let's go open it back up. Okay, let's go open it back up. Let's go open it back up, and let's see. You know what? Actually, I'm just gonna close out everything. That's the best way I figured out how to just get Tableau to forget stuff. Otherwise, it can kind of like linger. Some variables kind of linger around. Quite frankly, I'm not the most sophisticated Tableau user, but I think it is good for these business applications. So, like I said, most of my work is in research, so I would use typically like things like Python and other types of programs. But I think this definitely has a place. So let's take a look. GDP. Let's open up this this data set that we created, and we see that we have our data and the models. Great. Now let's go put them into a sheet. So how to do this? Well, pull GDP. Let's pull it into our columns. sorry, into our rows and date right there. Change the dates to quarter, okay? And now we need to add a model. So this will actually, we'll put our model data right underneath it. And let's go ahead and with our model data for 1993, you see it's put it into two different graphs. We want to put these on the same graph. So what we can do is click on the axes, and we can actually do dual axes, which puts them together. It looks like, oh, they're not quite mapping right. Oh, but look up here, this tops out at 25 and this tops out at 22. So these are not quite the same. So we can right click again and synchronize the axes. And now we have the same. So this is our 1993 model, okay? I think our 1993 model, wow, that is a little bit shocking. I'm way off here. I just fell off. I'm just like going, whoa, that's way shocking. Look at this model. Here's 2008. Okay, so the model that stopped in 1993, what do you notice about this? Look, it made a nice prediction all the way up until 2008. And then afterwards, it's like diverged. It diverged. So we are actually, this is something actually a little bit interesting. What we've found just by doing this simple exercise is that, and this is an idea out there, there's an idea that recessions, so when we have recessions, like big recessions like 2008, there's an idea out there that this causes what's called an economic scarring effect. A scar. What's the scar? The scar is that, guess what? We drop down, so we drop down, and then we never quite get back up to that trajectory that we could have had if we never dropped down in the first place. In other words, there's a permanent shift in our trajectory post 2008. This is something actually that's been pretty explored and pretty interesting topic. And it has to do with recessions, and it has to do with cycles. It has to do with the book that you're reading, because this is another dynamic to what happens when the bubble bursts. Okay? What happens when the bubble bursts? This is a different dynamic. I'm adding something to your book, okay? Yeah, your book is going to tell you about the mania and the panics and all the things that led up to the 2008 crisis. What we're seeing here is something a little bit disturbing, actually. It's that, hey, guess what? This actually maybe has a permanent, maybe forever in our future, we'll always have a scar. We'll never be back to where we could have been. That's an idea, okay? It's a debated about idea. It's called economic scarring, the scarring effect of recessions. It's interesting. I think very interesting. Okay, so we have a scarring idea. Now, let's go ahead. Now, if we were to go all the way up to 2008, let's take a look at this data. And let's go ahead and synchronize this as well. So format. You know what? I think we might have to do this. Let's do this actually. I'm going to remove. Let's go ahead and actually start a new worksheet. Let's go start a new worksheet. So we go date. And let's go with the 2008 model. Oops, what did I do? Model 2008 of some. Oh, this is year, and let's go quarter. Like this. There we go. That looks better. Getting concerned there for a minute. And there we go. Now we're back on track. And now we just need to actually blend these. So again, we'll do dual axes and we'll blend these and homogenize them or synchronize them, however you call it. And there you go. And actually, this particular model is also showing some aspects of scarring. Not as dramatic as the last, but So one thing I will say is that the slowdown, remember, that happened in 2008, did actually kind of start prior to 2008. So we had a little bit of a slowdown in investment and other things that were slowing us down. So maybe that's actually what's pulling this down a little bit. But we still see a little bit of a scar implication there. That's interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do, we'll call this we should actually title these 2008 model. Okay. We should title this the 1993 model. Okay, so I think the big things that are interesting here is that actually even with this big scar and with all of what happened, we're still not that far away, like into the distant future from 2023 all the way from 2008. That's quite a few years. That's quite a few years of predicting out. And just by looking and utilizing the trend, we can actually sometimes make some accurate forecasts. And this is going to be especially true with GDP. The GDP itself, the trend itself is the driver of growth. And there's typically growth and there's cyclical variations around that trend. And so with GDP, and you're trying to do forecasting, actually the trend can be very beneficial. That's one idea where the trend is beneficial. I'll show you another type where the trend is not beneficial. That's what we'll produce next.